I'm Julia Davis, a film major who stumbled into the business world with no experience in 2006. I was able to fail enough to learn how to run a seven-figure business and have provided consulting services to over 200 individually owned companies. Through this podcast, I hope to provide some perspective on the growth and grit it takes to accomplish big goals and share some hard lessons I've had to learn along the way. Thanks for tuning in to the Growth and Grit podcast. My name is Julia Davis. And if you find these helpful in this conversation series that we're doing here, please forward to somebody who might need to hear it or save it, earmark it for the future. Might be something you want to look back on or play for your leaders meeting in the future. So today I'm showing you guys again how to use the tool that was created with the conversation coach that I programmed into ChatGPT. I created a specific GPT just for this industry of high volume recruiting, but also managing people and managing new people and developing skill sets in others. What I found was ChatGPT itself was far too generic, where when I typed in a question I had, it pulled from too many sources and it gave me one kind of big answer. And I needed things to be way more specific to what I was looking for. So instead of typing and typing and typing, which I knew somebody who was new to business wouldn't necessarily do, I created a different GPT off of ChatGPT that was more specific, asked more specific questions, so it guided somebody through how to have the right conversation, which is great for anyone building a team, anybody who's leading people, anybody who runs an office, anybody who's learning how to develop, because we know conversations are one of the number one things that people feel uncomfortable doing, and it can be botched really, really easily. So today I'm talking about the big one, the whale, which is bad press. This could be bad press on a product if you're in the product business. It could be bad press on an employee, like an employee doesn't like your business. This could be bad press on a customer. Customer doesn't like what you're doing. One of the trickiest ones to combat, if you have bad press on the product, obviously that can be hurtful. If you sell like one product, that could be really damaging to your reputation. But everyone has an opinion and people kind of shrug it off. What I've found hurts and stings the most is when employees leave a business and they write negatives about the business. This is like a deep cut because you look at like, hey, I invested all this time and energy into this person. Now they don't like me anymore. What in the world happened? Usually there are warning signs that maybe you missed, and that's something you can think about. But if you're in that position now, or you get tied into somebody else's bad press, this happened to me all the time when I ran a business because my name was similar to other names, or I did something similar to other businesses, and they just kind of lumped us all together. And they were like, well, if this person does this across town, she must do the same thing. So that happens too. And it's not fair, but it is what it is. So I'm going to show you guys how to combat that. And I got really good at being proactive about that bad press instead of reactive about that bad press. And I can't express that enough. This is something you should be talking about all the time. This is not something that should just come up when it comes up. This is something that you should be addressing once, twice a week, because it's going to happen at some point. Your business is going to get looped in with another business, or your business is going to get a negative review from a customer, an employee, somebody that has a bad day, right? So I'm going to show you how to use a tool, this conversation coach tool, to figure out the conversation to have. And every conversation on bad press might be different depending on who is bringing it to you. So it's going to prompt us to ask some questions, but I'm going to pretend like I'm a brand new team leadership person, and I'm going to type in what I think I would probably type, which is one of the people I'm training found negatives about the business I'm in online. I'm just going to type that, see what happens. It says, okay, this is a very common moment in direct sales, truly. And how they handle it tells you a lot about whether they're developing an ownership mindset, right? So here, before I give you the script, here's some questions, right? Where did they find this? Glassdoor, Reddit, YouTube, BBB? Like, where did they find it? How long have they been in business, in the business that you're in? Is it a stronger rep or somebody who's looking for reasons not to work? On a scale of 1 to 10, how valuable are they to your organization right now? And then when they brought it up, was it out of genuine concern, or did it sound more like a justification for not working? So these questions are so important that you answer. So for example, I'm going to answer them and say they found it on Glassdoor, 2 weeks. They've been around, let's say, strong rep. How valuable are they? I would say a 7, let's say. Concern. Okay, so now I've answered those questions. So that it tells you kind of a little bit of the psychology. It says the goal isn't to win the argument. The goal is to help them think and evaluate the information properly. So you could say something like, I appreciate you bringing this up to me instead of just making an assumption. That tells me you're taking this seriously. What specifically did you read that concerned you the most? So it's like teaching you to pause and hear them. What most people do is they get incredibly defensive. So just pause and say, what concerned you the most here? Let them answer. Don't rush. Don't start defending what you're doing, right? And then say, I think it's smart to do research. If I were looking for an opportunity, I'd do the same thing. But one thing I've learned is that every business has people who had a great experience and people who had an average experience and people who had a bad experience. The question I always ask is who was writing the review? What was their expectation? And what was their level of effort? Like, what did they do? Why did they write that? And then bring it back to what you've actually seen, right? Or the person has actually seen. You've been here for 2 weeks based on what you personally experienced so far. Have we been honest with you about what the job is? Have them answer that question. How many people get promoted? What does it take to succeed? Right? So, like, if you're in real estate, you can do this too. You're like, hey, what does it take to succeed? Like, do you understand? And if they answer, yeah, you've been honest with me and things have been good, be like, then I would encourage you to keep gathering information from multiple sources. Talk to people who left, talk to people who are winning, talk to people who are in leadership, and don't let one group of opinions make a decision for you. Like, challenge them to think independently. A strong ownership challenge would be one thing you'll notice about business owners is they don't make decisions based on the loudest opinion. They collect information, look at results, and make their own judgment. This is so true, right? So you're teaching them how to think about things like diplomatically. They're not just going off of their gut instinct or emotion when there's a lot of sides to every story. Since they've only been there for 2 weeks, you'd ask, has anything you've read online actually matched your experience so far? Or is it creating concern about things you haven't experienced yet? It's getting them to think really deeply about what they read and process that information. What you're really trying to discover is number one, is it a legitimate concern they need clarity on? Number two, are they afraid of failure and that's starting to kick in, right? Are family and friends influencing them that they should be doing sales? This happens all the time, right? Or do they have a need for exposure to successful people within the organization? Like, have they traveled? Have they seen other people that are doing well? And if they're a strong person, I'd thank them for bringing it up and use an opportunity to teach discernment rather than to shut down the concern. So, what are the main complaints they found? A conversation changes quite a bit if the review is about pay, management, long hours. So you can type in another prompt to say the pay, it was about pay, or it was about long hours, or it was about whatever. So I'm going to do that and see where it takes me. So I'm going to say it was about long hours and culture. And I'm gonna see what happens. See what it comes up with here. Okay, so then I could say something like, I can understand why those reviews could catch your attention. Long hours and culture are things that impact your day-to-day experience and they're worth talking about, right? So you're giving them some fact from interpretation here. So the long hours part really aren't a secret, right? Building anything worthwhile usually requires more effort than an average job, especially who wants a leadership or an ownership opportunity in the future of some type of business, right? Like if you're in real estate, if you're in direct sales, whatever, you're trying to own a piece of your industry. The real question is whether those hours are producing growth, skill, income, and opportunities, if that's worth it to you, right? Because if the long hours aren't producing that, then it might not be worth it to that person. And then you make it personal. So, like, what are your goals? If someone wants a standard 9 to 5 and leave work, this might not be the right fit. If somebody wants to develop leadership skills and potentially run at their own, operation someday, then there's going to be seasons where putting in more than average makes sense, right? And then on the culture, this is where I'd be curious, it says, what specifically about the culture stood out to you? Feeling pushed outside your comfort zones, high accountability, competitive environment, like what made you not like that, right? Or, strong cultures aren't for everybody. Some people thrive in an environment where they're challenged and held accountable and expected to grow. Others prefer less pressure. Neither person is wrong. They're just looking for different things. So again, you're being like incredibly indifferent in this conversation, but you're genuinely trying to figure out if this person's going to be a good fit or not. And maybe after this conversation, this person leaves and says, hey, this is just not for me. No problem. At least you did your very best having this conversation, and I highly doubt you would have had this type of conversation without this tool. Especially if you're new. I would not have, me personally, not a chance. I would have definitely not had this conversation. So this is built on 20 years of critical conversation experience, and I plugged all my knowledge into one tool to try to get it to work. So, I really want you guys to be able to use this. If you want access to this tool, you can shoot me a message. You can find me on Instagram. You can leave a comment. Feel free to reach out to me. My Instagram handle is julia.bizstories. And you can find me there. And then if you click on the link in my bio, it's the very first one. So you can click on that and it will give you access to this ChatGPT. So feel free to grab that and use that. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day and I hope this is very useful for you. And I hope you can use this tool in the future. Thanks for being on. Every week on the Growth and Grit podcast, we bring you real stories and practical tools to help you thrive through challenges. If this resonates with you, make sure you subscribe, follow, and share this podcast with someone who could use it too. It only takes a second, but it would mean the world to us, and it keeps you plugged in to fresh inspiration.